long day for me.
Zach and Dom, I leave it to you to give me the signal when we're going live. Well then, good evening, neighbors. Tonight it is my distinct honor as chair of ANC 1A and in collaboration with my ANC colleagues to host this public town hall for our esteemed guest, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. ANC 1A represents the communities in whole or in part of Parkview, Pleasant Plains, and Columbia Heights, neighborhoods Congresswoman Norton knows well and to which she is no stranger. Commissioners who have joined us tonight thus far are Commissioners Christine Miller, Commissioner Zach Rabarchek, Commissioner Mukta Gorpade, Commissioner Layla Beno, and Commissioner Dottie Love-Wade. I do expect other commissioners to join us tonight. Unfortunately, there are a number of meetings, and so I know people are going from meeting to meeting. Congresswoman Norton, now in her 15th term, has been and continues to be a strong advocate for the District of Columbia. In addition to serving as chair of the House Subcommittee on Highways and Transit, she also serves on the Committee of Oversight and Reform and the Committee of Transportation and Infrastructure. Councilmember Norton's many accomplishments include funding for DC high school students to attend colleges and universities, tax credits for DC homebuyers, senatorial courtesy for to recommend federal judges, the U.S. Attorney, and other significant federal law enforcement positions, and many, many more, including successfully preventing Congress from changing any of DC's laws since 1991. Earlier today, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Equity Act, which will enshrine legal protections for LGBTQ Americans by amending existing civil rights laws to prevent businesses and institutions from discriminating against people based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And we thank Representative Norton for her leadership on that bill. For tonight's program, we have given Congresswoman Norton a number of questions and topics that were submitted in advance for her consideration. Additionally, as time allows, we will be taking questions from the community and ANC commissioners. Participants are invited to submit a question if they have joined us by Zoom, or to hit *9 to alert us if they have a question if they have called in. So without further ado, please join me and my ANC colleagues in welcoming Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. Congresswoman, it's our pleasure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And let me begin by saying what a pleasure it is for me to be with ANC 1A. I think it's the neighborhood I grew up in. So I'm very familiar with your neighborhood. So you gave me some homework. You really are serious about this meeting. And I am very, very pleased to be able to tell you some good news. So let's begin with your first item was securing additional funding for DC in the upcoming COVID relief bill. We will be voting on that bill tomorrow. And let me tell you first, we're getting the $755 million that Republicans took from us. We were outraged having any money taken from us, but the reason is that they categorized us as a city. Now, when it comes to federal funding, we are always treated as a state. The reason is that I'm looking at the folks who pay the highest taxes per capita in the United States and the only Americans who pay taxation without representation. So the one way in which we, even without statehood, have been treated like the states because we pay state money is when in bills that apportion money. Well, in the upcoming bill, we do get that money back. But when it comes to your specific question, we get exactly what we asked for. Isn't it good to have Democrats in power in the House, the Senate, and as in the presidency? Exactly what we asked for. We're getting $2.2 billion. Now, that money is particularly important to DC because I've gotten DC treated for what it is. The district is a state, a county, and a city. So I get funds for DC in all three categories. And that will show up in this bill. I won't go through all of the ways in which that money will come, but 2.2 billion should tell you all you need to know. You asked about DC statehood and how citizens can further support it. I can't say enough about DC statehood, except that we're finally rising. I've tried to get statehood ever since I came to Congress, but I've been in the minority. Almost all of the time I've been in the Congress. I've had to do it the hard way for DC, in the minority, finding Republicans I could work with. Well, you can't find any Republicans you can work with on DC statehood. So I had to wait until we got in the majority. We passed the bill in June. Already we have enough co-sponsors to pass it again. And of course, now we have a president who supports statehood as well. Now, what you can do, already people are doing things that I never thought about. When I do my half-hour walk every day in the streets of DC to keep myself sane, during that walk, I have noticed all kinds of new DC statehood signs going up. You will find your neighbors trying to get our signs up more. But what you can do is, people in various states, you can help us get to where we are now getting. After the DC statehood bill passed, well, let me put it this way. Before the DC statehood passed, Americans were all over the map. Some were against it. I'm talking even Democrats. Some who were for it. Some said they already got it. Passing that bill educated the public. So right now, as I speak, according to the polls, hear me, 50% of Americans support DC statehood. We are on our way to DC statehood. I could, in the question and answer period, if you start me talking about DC statehood, I'll never get to any other subject. But I'll be glad to discuss that further in the question and answer period. Your third issue was reimbursement to the district for significant expenses incurred during the week of insurrection. Yeah, you betcha. And I have a bill in. I'm pleased that I've got a real partner in the Senate, Senator Van Hollen, who with me is trying to get the district's emergency security funding. We are owed $80 million. Well, why do we get this funding? Because we are the nation's capital, we pick up security funds, security costs, when all these people come into the district, including those, by the way, who came in for the insurrection. We had to have police there, MPD, and other officers. So we get paid for that. Now that we have a Democratic House and Senate, I believe I will be able to get that funds. And that was your third question. State of fencing around the Capitol. Don't get me started. I have got a bill, no fencing at the Capitol bill. I could have called it "Don't Fence Me In" at the Capitol. I am completely outraged. Not that the fence is there now, but that the acting Capitol Police Chief had the nerve to come forward and said she thought we should leave that permanent fencing at the Capitol. I tried to get our kids in for one of those rare snowfalls we had this winter. One kid, one adult. I couldn't even get them in for that. I get into the house. Nobody gets in there. I get in by going in through the garage. I live 9 blocks from the Capitol. I can see those gates from here. Look, I'm not saying take it down. You got some chatter still coming? Fine. But no permanent fencing at the Capitol. Open up our Capitol. And I believe I will have the support of the Speaker and of Democrats. And guess what? Many Republicans are now coming out and saying, take down the fencing. I think if you're a member of Congress, you don't want to send the message home to your to your to your constituents. Look, I'm inaccessible, but just know I'm working for you. You know, they need to be able to come to the Capitol to see you. We need to see that fencing down. That is a priority of mine. Now I'm doing it a very responsible way. I'm not saying take it down instantly. Over a period of several months, I expect to take it down. Now I've written to the Capitol Police Board and said, remove the razor wire now. That shouldn't take a bill. If I need a bill, I'll do it. The razor wire around the Capitol makes it look like a concentration camp of some kind. It's not only an eyesore, it sends a horrific message to the world. First, that we can't take care of our own Capitol. And secondly, to make up for what could have been done, what Trump did not do, there was plenty of advance word that this crowd would come to the Capitol. We didn't have the right to call out our Capitol, our National Guard, excuse me. I have a bill to make that happen. Now, if we have statehood, it would take care of one, it would take care of it all. But I'm on two planes when it comes to getting what the district needs. One is statehood, which would mean everything. You'd have your own National Guard. But the other is to get as many things as we can pending statehood that we can get through statute. And one of those, of course, is control over our own National Guard. Now you had one more issue, appointments to U.S. District Court. Yes, the presidents, Democratic presidents give me what is known as senatorial courtesy. We don't have any senators, but I get the same rights that senators get to recommend people for the district court and federal officials of that kind. I've already done so because the Biden administration asked me, for example, to do the U.S. attorney already and the district court, but that's not the way I usually do it with my getting applications. I do it through a commission. I have a commission of DC residents. Every ward is represented. They do the interviewing of district court judges, of U.S. attorneys, et cetera. Then they give me 3 names. I then decide who to recommend to the president. We're going to use that procedure, which I have used in prior Democratic administrations again. We have a vacancy now. And so I'm in the process of doing that work, or my commission is, as I speak. If I could just go on quickly and let you know what I've been doing in the Capitol. I already mentioned that we passed our DC statehood bill and senatorial courtesy. I am chair of the largest subcommittee in the Capitol, Transportation and Infrastructure. We got the only bill through last time, and it's going to be a part of reconciliation. We're going through a process now. You can only do it once during each session, where you can get bills through the House and Senate without any amendments, without going through the normal process. We're going through that now. My bill, my transportation reauthorization bill, is in the reconciliation bill that is going to be voted on tomorrow. It's got Metro in it, it's got Amtrak, it's got public transportation of all kinds. Want you to know also, as I go down the list of what we're doing, I've gotten passed in my committee hundreds of millions of dollars authorized for federal construction, leases, and renovation in DC. Let me tell you why that's important. We want federal agencies to be here. They bring us money, and they also bring us constituents who come to these federal buildings and use our restaurants. That pays money to us in tax money. So I have been trying to get that passed, and that has been approved. On our appropriation bill, I think your chairman mentioned DC tag. I won't go through all the appropriation, but we got what we wanted in the appropriation bill. DC tag is certainly worth mentioning, though. The Republicans, when they controlled last session, tried to cut DC tag by $10 million. I got it back up to where it was, to $40 million. And this time, with a Republican with the Democrats in charge of everything, I'm trying to get it raised for the first time. This is very important for our youngsters because we don't have any state-supported institutions like Maryland, Virginia. Instead, and that's how I was able to get this bill through, we have only a open admission university. We're glad to have UDC, but when we were losing residents, I convinced the Congress, I'm in the minority now, that it would help us to retain residents, if they passed a bill, which I did with Republicans, to allow DC residents using state tuition. They pay the state level tuition, but they don't pay out-of-state tuition. So let's take the University of Virginia. If you can go to the University of Virginia as if you were a University of Virginia resident, you will pay less tuition than if you went as an out-of-state resident. So we pay in-state rates. As a result, DC residents attend college in all 50 states of the United States. That's important in and of itself, but if you live in the district, it's particularly important because there is virtually, if you want a good job in this town, you're going to need at least 2 years of education, a college education. National Children's Museum, oh boy, got that to remain in the district. They were the only museum that had to pay rent. I've got that rent-free. Now that is a site that was open, and then the virus came, and it's not open now. But that brings a lot of revenue to DC, and it's a big joy to our residents as well. I think those are the major bills. I am open to your questions or to discuss some of the bills I never said anything about because I didn't want to take up all the time from you. So, Mr. Chairman, could I ask if there's anything further?
Absolutely.
Your own constituents want to ask me.
Sure. I'm looking at some of the commissioners on the call, and I do have a couple of questions in the Q&A. So are there any questions from commissioners? Or shall I start with one of the neighbors? Oh, well, I see the hands go up right away. I'm going to start with Commissioner Miller, and then we'll go to Commissioner Rabarchik and Commissioner Gorpade. I think that was the order that the hands went up, but they went up so fast it was hard to tell.
Thank you, Chairman Bass, and thank you, Congresswoman, for coming and meeting with us and really taking the time to go through that list. Most of my questions were addressed, so I just wanted to pull out one of my questions, which was regarding the child tax credit and what that's looking like coming down the line.
That's a major priority. There was a discussion. Go ahead.
No, yes, I'm glad to hear that.
The child tax credit is a major priority. Democrats have revived it again. And I'm not sure, the one thing I'm not sure of, although I believe it may be in this bill that's coming up Friday. That's exquisitely important. We have made it a refundable tax credit too. So that means that you'll get money back if you've already paid for childcare as well.
Excited because I
Commissioner,
know,
oh, there you go.
oh, sorry.
No,
Because
we lost your sound there for a minute.
oh, you did? Sorry about that. We have multiple meetings going on in this house right now, so I apologize. But I wanted to ask you how we can work to get that tax credit to those families and those residents in the lower income brackets that often get left out of these kind of opportunities. And specifically, I was looking at, I think when Obama had his, you did a tax fair to help get residents registered to have their taxes completed. I'm wondering if that's something that you could envision doing for this as well, just to make sure that we're getting everybody caught into that.
Well, that's one of the reasons it's a refundable tax credit, so that you get low income people as well as people who pay taxes and simply use it as a deduction.
Right.
So yes, we're aiming very much for low income people. They are the ones that have been out of work. And the moment they're able to go back to work, they will need somewhere for their children and an ability to pay for their children.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Commissioner Ravarchek, you're on deck.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Congresswoman. I appreciate your time. I was hoping you could take a minute to talk a bit about how you work with your colleagues on the Hill to reduce the number of firearms coming into the district. You know, I know the mayor recently has started another gun violence prevention initiative, but I mean, we know that guns are coming in through the district's borders from states that are surrounding us. So could you give us a glimpse into how you work with other Congress members on that issue?
Yes, the district has the strongest gun laws in the town, and yet we're flooded with guns. And we've had an increase in homicides, particularly during this pandemic. We can't do anything without a national gun safety law, because we do all we can inside, but your police have an annual press conference in which they show the guns they have collected from people bringing them in. And yes, residents often use them. This has been a major headache for Democrats, trying to get sensible gun laws passed. We have been so focused on the pandemic, I can't tell you where it stands in the order of priority, but I can tell you this: it's long been a priority for the residents, given the avalanche of gun violence instances throughout the United States. I'm sure that once we pass that plateau, we'll be back, since we control both houses, on that issue. For me, it's always been a priority, since one of the things that, and I have gotten this taken care of, but the Republic, we had almost no riders left. I've been able to get the riders off with DC with Democratic control. But the favorite rider was to abolish all of DC's gun laws. We were able to keep them from abolishing all of DC's gun laws, but not able to keep Republicans from seriously damaging our gun laws. So this is a priority for me, and will remain so for this 217th Congress.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gorpade, I believe you're next.
Thank you so much for being with us here today and spending some time with us and explaining your work. Definitely want to say thank you so much for your work on DC Tag. I think this entire city was shaking a bit when there were talks about cutting it. But I would love some more information on how you mentioned that you were thinking about hopefully getting more money to be put towards DC Tag, and whether, and I don't know if this is a question that you can necessarily answer, but whether that might mean that the allotment could go up per student, especially considering that public schools in this country are like on average like $20,000, and that aid only goes towards tuition. So wondering how that might actually trickle down to individual students that are.
Well, it's been at 10,000 for a very long time.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do now is get it raised to at least 15,000. Now, I should say that most state institutions don't cost much more than 10,000. So it hasn't handicapped our students as much as you think it would. I mean, you might be thinking about places like UVA or other places like that where the tuition, even for people who live in the state, is greater than $10,000. So I am trying with Democrats in power to get at least 15,000.
Great. And is there any chance that the money could go towards anything other than tuition? I'm just thinking about students that go to University of Rochester. No chance. Okay, that's all right. Okay, we'll find money.
We're not asking. No, wait a minute. We're not asking for anything more than the states do themselves.
Sure.
When the state gives you money, it gives you tuition money. It doesn't give you room and board money.
Sure. That makes
so
sense.
We can't ask for more than, all we're trying to do for the district is make us equal with everybody else. So we say, give us the same tuition break you give everybody else. And I'm surprised, frankly, that, remember, before this, people were actually going to those colleges in 50 states. That's in part because that funding for tuition is about comparable to what it is in most states, only $10,000. And therefore, people had money freed up for their room and board or however they used to support themselves.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bonneau, I see your hand has been raised.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Congresswoman Norton. Really wonderful to spend time with you this evening. You mentioned that you are serving on the Transportation Subcommittee, and so I wonder if this is a question best directed at you or one of your colleagues, but I know WMATA opened its public comment period this week as we think about the Metro's FY22 budget, and there's a lot of concern about the impact of COVID on our public transit system. And so just wondering, obviously the public comment period is a great way for our residents to speak up and say what they need in terms of continued reliable, affordable service here in the district. But if that's a broader conversation that you're having in Congress as well, perhaps not only in DC, but across the country as we try to recover from COVID. Thank you.
Wait a minute, my staff said that when I said that that it looked like a concentration camp around the fencing. Some people have taken offense at that. I hope you do not, and I certainly apologize. I recognize that is that's an analogy we don't want to make, even for the terrible fencing around the Capitol. Now, if I can get back to what you were asking, I'm sorry. That question, since staff brought me this notion, and I wanted to apologize right away.
No, I appreciate you addressing that. I was just wondering if you could comment about the future of Metro here in the DC area and the broader implications of COVID on the public transit system across the country. You mentioned, working on the Transportation Subcommittee. And I know the public comment period opened this week for Metro's FY22 budget, and that's a great opportunity for us to stress the need for reliable, affordable service throughout the city. And I know we're hopefully going to see some relief for Metro in the COVID relief package, but just if you could comment on that, or if there's more we could be doing as well. Appreciate
And
that.
there is money for Metro and for transportation in the COVID relief package. I'm pleased to say we are public transit dependent, and the more the merrier, because we want to get these cars off the road. And I hope you will engage in the public comment period now that Metro is going to have some money. As I go out on my half-hour walk every afternoon, I see empty buses. Now that's because of COVID, but essential workers use those buses and use Metro. And that's why Metro has had to keep running, but it's been running at a terrible deficit. A loss of more than 80% of its riders. So this package will help make up for that, particularly in a city that cannot do without Metro above ground and underground.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from commissioners? If not, I have one or two of my own. And if you don't mind, I think I'll bundle this one. As far as I consider this kind of procedural for Congress in general. We did have someone write in asking if, I'll rephrase it as, are you focused on there are efforts to end the filibuster in the Senate, and they're wondering what your view is on that and what your efforts might be. And if I may bundle one of mine in with that, I've also, I understand recently that there's been some discussion about possibly returning earmarks or something similar to that. And I'm kind of curious about your opinion on that, and if you think that would actually help things move in a more bipartisan way or not.
Those are terrific questions. In the filibuster now, we need it to end to get DC statehood. Don't think that it won't end. The reason the Senate, controlled by Democrats, held up organization is to get was the filibuster issue. We have gotten rid of the filibuster on everything, for example, judges, but we've not gotten rid of it for legislation. That's all that's left, but that's a lot. So there is a growing virtual movement in the Senate to end the filibuster. That would mean more for the district than, of course, anybody else, but that's not why they're doing it. They're doing it, for example, because in the last Congress, where Republicans controlled, nothing happened. The Senate is a moribund body. Nothing happened because although there were more than 400 bills from the House over there, some of them bipartisan, they didn't move them. That didn't have to do entirely with the filibuster, but it is part of the filibuster problem. I believe that the filibuster is on its last legs. And if Democrats retain control, I believe we will be able to get rid of it. And as I said, it'll be more for the district than for any other jurisdiction. As to earmarks, earmarks are coming back, and I want them back. Even when I was in the minority, and as I said, I've been in the minority most of my time in the Congress, I could always get some earmarks for the District of Columbia. I was very careful. I didn't do earmarks that Eleanor wanted. I asked residents, I talked about what they needed that was not in the bills. And I took that from what residents wanted. And we got, I wish I could remember, I mean, it's been so long since we had earmarks. But we were able to benefit significantly, even with all of the barriers, home rule and no statehood presents with earmarks. As long as earmarks are controlled and cannot be used except for matters entirely related to your district that were not in the appropriate bill, then earmarks do no harm and do a lot of good.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I see we've been joined by Commissioners Michael Ray, Rashida Brown, and Dieter Lehman Morales. So I welcome you. I know that you were probably at another meeting prior to this. Please feel free to jump in with any questions you may have. I will look at one more from one of our neighbors while they're getting acclimated. Earlier tonight, you mentioned the 2.2 billion that you requested and got in. The question is, how did you manage to get everything you asked for this time versus
Democrats.
Oh.
One word, Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the presidency.
Thank you.
Remember, I wasn't asking for anything extravagant. I was trying to make up for lost funds. And you know that this bill is controversial because some people, Republicans, some people meaning Republicans, are saying it's too large. What we're saying is that it's large for a reason. That if you want to get rid of this pandemic, let these funds flow out into the districts. The sooner you do so, the sooner the pandemic will be over.
Very good. Do we have any other questions from commissioners or members of the community? If you can always put something in the Q&A. We have another one from a member of the community that says, DC has strong reproductive rights laws. Is there anything in the pipeline from Democrats federally to finally protect a person's rights to bodily autonomy, especially with so many attacks throughout the individual states?
Yeah, this is another favorite. This is another favorite of Republicans. DC's approach. But again, because we are, and by the way, bills have been introduced. Yes, but most of them are nationwide bills. So this is continues to be this personal matter, this matter that jurisdictions should decide based on what their own constituents want, continues to be a big controversial issue in the Congress. I expect it to be less so with Democrats, excuse me, in control.
And then I have another question that is probably, I'll say it's near and dear to my heart, though most people probably wouldn't know that. But I think most people have noticed that the postal system is broken. I mean, seriously broken. How are we going to fix that? I have to say this. In my younger days, I used to say there are three things you can rely on: death, taxes, and the postal system. Well, the postal system's gone now. How do we get it back to something that's reliable? Since, quite frankly, I've always looked at the postal system as a form of equity, like one thing we could always count on that was the lowest cost and extremely good service for everybody to conduct business, pay their bills, and get their business done.
Well, that's a timely question, since committee on which I serve, Government Reform Committee, has jurisdiction over the Postal Service and just had a hearing just yesterday. Had the Trump-appointed Postmaster General in, took him over the coals, which is where he belonged. I am amazed, and it really is a tribute to the states that we were able to do this election using the Postal Service. And look at it, we won the election, and we won even states where Democrats usually do not win. This is a big priority for mine. We do have 4 new commissioners that the new president is appointing. We can't get rid of DeJoy because he's a term appointed person. He's messed the Postal Service up. with new appointees, we believe you will see reform. Now, bear in mind what reform means. Part of what he was doing had to do with the fact that the Postal Service simply isn't used as much any longer. We use technology in many ways. Of course, I go to get my mail every day. There have been bills to take away Saturday delivery. And I tell you, Republicans and Democrats rebel against that. People want their mail, even though the mail consists a lot of bills these days, they want their mail. And therefore, there's no question that part of what LaJoy was doing, as he explained, was right-sizing the Postal Service so that you had fewer boxes and fewer personnel. We're trying to make sure we have a core service there and a Postmaster General, certainly with the new additions, focusing on how to do that. We don't say you need the same postal service we had when I was a child growing up in the District of Columbia. We are saying that it is unthinkable not to have a functioning postal service, and it's pretty hard to see it as functioning in the sense that it should be.
I very much appreciate that. A question from one of the attendees. How involved are you with renovations occurring in National Park Service parks? And how much oversight do you have with regards to those renovations? For example, renovations going on at Malcolm X, Meridian Hill, or Franklin Park as examples.
Oh, this is one of my favorite subjects. And I want to invite everybody at ANC 1A, and indeed you, Mr. Chairman, to do what other residents have done. Our parks are owned by the National Park Service and kept up by the National Park Service. And we want to keep it that way because to keep it up would cost the district a lot of money. But they are favorite places, particularly during this pandemic. It's one place where you can go outdoors and not get sick, in fact, get healthy. What I do is I have quarterly meetings with the Park Service, and I have those meetings in various neighborhoods. If your neighborhood would like me to bring the Park Service so you can discuss your parks, please let me know and I will arrange for a National Park Service meeting in your own neighborhood. It's one of the most popular things I do. I never realized just how important our parks were until I started holding these quarterly meetings with the National Park Service.
Well, as a follow-up to that, I will say that I'm sure you're also aware of this scenario. I don't believe we have any National Park Service parks per se within the boundaries of ANC 1A, though we're very close proximity to some. But what we do have are National Park Service, shall we say, smaller parks that are owned by the Park Service, but they've given the jurisdiction to the District of Columbia so that the District of Columbia has the honor of spending our own money to maintain their land. So in that scenario, is there anything more that we could do?
Well, those are usually little slivers of land. Those are not, by the way, I'm sure you must have some parks in your.
Well,
ANC.
not in 1A, for instance. We do have the small parks, but the old DPR headquarters is federally owned, but we have the right to maintain it. But if you want to think about things that are very close proximity, that if you want to be creative, like the southern part of McMillan Reservoir, back in the day used to be a park and is now behind fencing. You know, and
is it behind fencing? Why is it behind fencing?
Because the reservoir is all fenced in. So if you, I know that of everyone on the call, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say the old Bloomingdale Recreation Center, which was there from the 1940s.
Wild now.
Yeah, that is That's all behind fencing and nothing but a parking lot. And my question is, it was constructed for the residents of the District of Columbia. Why can't we open it back up when a fence as far back as the roadway is still further away from the reservoir than the fence on 4th Street?
Now,
No.
and you're saying there was a park there where the reservoir, wait a minute, are you talking about the reservoir itself, that land? Oh my
It's a-
goodness, I'm trying to get that land.
Well, not that, I mean, I don't think that, I don't think, I understand the concern and not wanting to have people go right up to the reservoir, but back in the 1940s, on the south side of the reservoir where there's quite a bit more land, there was a District of Columbia public recreation center. There was a playground there.
Yeah,
Which is totally, like, that's no longer available, even though some of that land could be used without any danger to the reservoir. And
I'm
so,
trying to get that land given back to the District of Columbia. That's a huge amount of land. And some of it is off from the reservoir.
Mhm.
Some of it is federal land. So we can't do anything about that. But I've had a bill, and I will get to you where we have been. My staff is taking notes on how much of that land can go back to the District of Columbia. I will get that to you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, and I know many people around the area, whether they live in ANC 1A or 1B, or even over there in Ward 5, we would all be willing to help you and work with you on that. Because I think you've rightfully pointed out that public green space has become so extremely precious, especially now with the pandemic, that I think people are being very creative in trying to find safe outdoor spaces. Since we did had some commissioners who joined us midway through, are there any questions you may have?
I have a question.
Brown, Commissioner Brown.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman, for joining us, and thank you so much for your service. My question I also included in the chat box, and this is just considering the insurrection at the Capitol building and many concerns about public safety and where our city is located in the nation. Is the new Congress expected to reintroduce the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act? And if so, are there going to be any new provisions that you're thinking about just in response to the recent incident that happened at the Capitol?
Yeah, domestic terrorism has become a major focus of the Congress because we have been focused on terrorism off our shores, but now we see what terrorism really looks like. And there is a bill in now, and I expect some action on it, particularly given the insurrection. That was an act of domestic terrorism.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lehman Morales, I see your hands up.
Yes, hi, Congresswoman Norton, thank you so much for taking the time out to be here tonight with us and speaking to our community. I'm sure you have a busy schedule, so I really do appreciate it on their behalf. I apologize if you covered this already before I joined the call tonight, but if you haven't, I would love to get your thoughts on an issue that's kind of dear and near to me, immigration. Personally, I'm a first generation immigrant, and I represent a community that's mostly Latino. So my question to you is regarding the current immigration policy of this administration. I know that your party, and rightfully so, criticized the previous administration for their treatment of migrant children at the border. Their building of migrant detention facilities to house these children in very unethical and inhumane conditions, for lack of a better term. However, the current administration, since it's been sworn in, has continued the tradition of deporting migrants back to their home countries. Haiti, for example, is one big example of that happening recently. And the Biden administration has also announced that they're also going to continue with plans to expand and build new detention facilities for migrants on the border. So what are you doing as a representative to kind of keep the Biden administration's feet to the fire in terms of immigration policies. I know that President Biden had talked about ending deportations or ending these facilities and returning these children to their families, but it seems that actions are speaking louder than words, and we're not really seeing those commitments pan out.
No, I think you are seeing actions. The president has already begun action on immigration policy and is being roundly criticized for it. He is put in place a new number of immigrants can be admitted to the United States already. He has given priority to children and the children who were separated from their parents. I don't have on the top of my head everything he is doing, but so early in the administration, he is focused on immigration policy. I think I already said the wall has stopped being built. This is a very difficult issue, but he wants to make sure that there's an orderly way for people to enter the process of, to enter the country. And he certainly wants to get rid of these, he's trying to get rid of holding people and squalid conditions. There's a lot of work to be done there, and we're only into 3 weeks in the administration, but I was pleased that he had already put immigration matters on his list of things to be done in his first 3 weeks. That one will take some time to essentially redo entirely our immigration policy so that we can undo all of these people being held in other countries with no way to decide who qualifies to enter the country and on what basis. And to qualify for statehood, we have the leftover issue of the dreamers, who are really extraordinary examples of people who have remained in the country, even as under President Obama, even as the Republicans, and especially Trump, tried several times to interfere with their status, and Congress was able to keep that from happening. This is one of the most serious and most difficult issues facing the new president. But I'm pleased that he has already put priority on undoing what the last administration did and instituting a sane and humane immigration policy, especially at the border.
Okay, thank you, Congresswoman. I believe we had you or have you for an hour tonight. We're almost at time. So I will give you the final word. If there's anything that you want to share or that you want to go back to that you weren't able to get to, that has come to your mind based on the questions.
No, I just want to thank you for such excellent questions, particularly for forwarding those questions ahead of time, the 4 issues that allowed me to do some homework. So I came with what you were truly interested in. And I must say that your own questions beyond those have been very on point. And I very much appreciated this opportunity to hear from you and to give the best answers I could.
Well, and I will say I'm delighted that we were able to set up a special meeting for the community and the commissioners. We thought it was very important to give you as much time as possible. And that often doesn't happen at a regular ANC meeting. So we were thrilled to have this much of your time. We know you're very busy and that you're very engaged. So we thank you for that.
Well, I look forward to being with ANC 1A in person in the near future.
We all look forward to that. When that's possible, we will definitely schedule something so that we can meet in person.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And
Bye, everybody.
have a good night, everyone. Thank you all for your wonderful questions and for participating.
Take care. I will end meeting recorded.